Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Isaac. This is your favorite Gundam podcast where we talk about everything from Gunpla to Gundam anime series, Gundam movies, Gundam, really everything. Everything Gundam, even the manga, clothes. You better believe it.
That's right. We did talk about those Gundam jeans that one time.
Oh, Gundam jeans, yeah. We're going to have a fashion episode, cosplay episode. It's coming. But today, we're not talking about that, Brian, right? What are we talking about today?
We are talking about one of the seminal moments in Gundam's history. We're going to review and discuss the movie, the big one, Char's Counterattack.
Wow. I mean, it was inevitable, listeners, because we've kind of been going backwards, right? We read all the F9, the Gundam Formula novel, manga, and then we watched F91, and now we're going back to Char's Counterattack. So, yeah, we watched it. I watched mine today. Brian, I think you watched it a week or so back.
Yeah, that's right. I watched it last week. I think I've seen Char's Counterattack probably 5 or 6 times now. One thing that I always liked about Char's Counterattack is that because it was such a big movie, they always played it at anime expos at least once during that anime expo. And so if I went, I would always try to catch it because they played it in one of those big screening rooms. It's not really a movie theater, but it was sort of the biggest screen that I was ever going to see it on, probably. So I always thought that was fun. But you know, it is a movie from 1988, so it is a little bit older. So as time went on, the time that they showed Char's Counterattack at Anime Expo kept getting like weirder and weirder. Like when I first started going in the early 2000s, they would show it, you know, at some sort of like prime time slot or maybe in the morning at a reasonable hour. But then as time went on, they started moving it to like 1 a.m. and then 3 a.m. or maybe like 7 a.m. And I was like, oh man, like that's really late or really early. But
it's just tradition. They have to do it out of just protocol.
Yeah. But one thing I did notice, Isaac, I don't know if you knew about this. I did not know about this, and I'm kind of upset. They re-released it in theaters last year. Like a limited showing for like 1 or 2 days here in the United States.
Was it like anywhere in California?
Yeah, some of the bigger AMCs would have had it. But yeah, I think it was in December. So it was definitely before the pandemic, and it was for the 40th anniversary of Gundam.
Yeah, those were the final good months. Yeah. I mean, I would have seen it, but at the same time, I wouldn't have paid an arm and a leg. You know, my opinion of this movie is that it was important, but I feel like at the same time, it has some flaws. It could have been better, and I'm not sure it was an incredible ending to not only Zeon versus the Federation, but also the ongoing rivalry with Amuro and Char.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think this will be one of the first times where our opinions probably diverge pretty heavily. I actually really like Char's Counterattack.
Yeah.
So this will be interesting.
Yeah, it will.
So let's start with some background facts, shall we?
Do it. Dive into the lore and the history.
Okay, so Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack is a movie from 1988. It was released theatrically in Japan. This was meant to sort of cap off, you know, everything Gundam up until that point. So you really at that point only had, you know, Mobile Suit Gundam, Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, and Mobile Suit Double Zeta Gundam. So this was the culmination. This was the climax of Amuro versus Char, Federation versus Zeon. This is the granddaddy of them all. How can you watch it today? They did release it in parts of the world on YouTube, I think, within the last year or so for the anniversary on the Gundam Info channel. I don't know if it's still on there. You might want to check, but you can definitely get it on Blu-ray. I don't think it's on any streaming services at the moment, but definitely worth a check. But Blu-ray is probably your main source. Or you can go pick up the DVD that was released, back in 2004-ish, Isaac?
With that cool sleeve. It comes with like this cool sleeve that has Neo Zeon's logo.
Yeah, that was probably the best DVD release that they did back in the day. Well, actually, no, Zeta Gundam was better, but the sleeve was pretty neat. So if we look at the log line, for this log line, I went and actually looked up what the Toonami promo said back in the day. You know, the ones that were voiced by Peter Cullen, because I thought those were really good. Do you remember those, Isaac?
Yeah, absolutely. They were awesome.
Yep. So according to Peter Cullen, aka Optimus Prime, the log line is 14 years after the 1-year war, Zeon forces yearn for redemption. Char, the leader of this rabble, has hatched a plan, Under the guise of surrender, Zeon will make their final assault. Deeming Earthlings so vile a creature, Char schemes to save the planet by destroying the people. Only the Lundo Bell, Amuro Ray, and his Gundam stand in their way. That's fairly accurate for the movie.
That's a really that gets me pumped for the movie. And then you watch it, and it's like a quarter of it's about Quest Pariah.
Yeah,
like,
we'll get the Quest.
Okay.
So let's talk about other versions of this. Like, how does this exist across all of Gundam media? So there is the movie, which when someone says Char's Counterattack, they're primarily talking about the movie. But Isaac, did you know there are 4 other versions of Char's Counterattack?
No, I mean, do you mean like there were 4 edits and some are longer than others?
No, so there is the original novel that the movie's based on, which is called Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack. Well, it was originally called Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack, and that novel came out in 1987 through 1989 in a magazine. They changed the title of that to Mobile Suit Gundam High Streamer in 2002 when it was re-released. So that's number 1. Then there's another novel from 1988 called Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack Beltachika's Children. And that novel is based on the movie idea that Tomino wrote when Sunrise said, go ahead and make Char's Counterattack into a movie. He rewrote the plot from what is now called High Streamer and made Amuro together with Beltachika, which was his love interest from Zeta Gundam, some people may remember. And Amuro was seen as more of a, quote, family man in that version. And Sunrise eventually rejected this idea, and they went back to making the movie based on the original novel. So there are 2 Char's Counterattack novels in addition to the movie, which I think is ridiculous. And the Beltachika's Children novel is the one that has the different designs for the new Gundam and the Sazabi. So instead of new, it's High New, and instead of Sazabi, it's the Nightingale. But notice that High New is in Beltachika's Children. High New is not in High Streamer, which I think is very confusing.
Yeah. Oh my God. This is already. This is a case of having story ideas, and then you had multiple tangents you wanted to go off to or things you wanted to change. So you just released each version of that rather than just the one story.
Yep. Okay, and we're not done. There's still 2 more.
No.
There's a Char's Counterattack manga. There's a Char's Counterattack manga adaptation from 1988, which is also written by Tomino. I'm pretty sure that is basically a straight retelling of the film, but in manga format, which is pretty common. I mean, we get things like that over here in the United States. People make comic book versions of the film or novel versions of the film like after the film has come out, which is, I don't really ever know who reads those, but that's there, I guess, if you want to go read it. And then the final version is a manga adaptation of the Beltachika's Children novel, and that started in 2014. And I think it's done. I think it went 3 or 4 years. I think they made this manga adaptation of that novel because that novel has a lot of fans, because a lot of fans love the High New and the Nightingale designs.
They're pretty awesome.
They're pretty great. Yeah.
You know what? As the listeners probably know, I'm pretty pro Zeon. But I would rather have a High New than a Nightingale.
Ooh, that's a big decision right there.
Take that, Char. You traitor.
Oh. So with that background, regardless, the one we're talking about today is the movie that everyone knows and loves from 1988. So Isaac, why don't you take us into the story a little bit?
Okay. This movie, whether you like this or not, the story dives into it, doesn't it, Brian? It starts off immediately with a new Neo Zeon. I'm guessing this is our 3rd version of Neo Zeon, if I'm counting correctly. Anyways, this one's being led by Char, and it opens with them dropping an asteroid on Lhasa, Tibet. Hathaway narrowly escapes, goes to space. He meets Bright Noah, his dad, and they and oh God, how do I continue the story, Brian? All right. So much is happening at once. All right. At the same
I agree. This movie marches forward at a breakneck pace.
Yeah.
And I would say that this movie is just as fast-paced as F91, but covers less story, and it worked better because you already know half the characters, whereas F91 had none of that. Char's Counterattack is more contained and involves people you already know about. So it's more palatable. But that said, you need to pay attention to every line of dialogue in this film.
Right, because right off the bat, it turns out that there's going to be a peace negotiation, and then of course Zeon turns on them, and it was a bad peace negotiation. I was like, of course, the Federation would trust Zeon, and then and then it backfires. But yeah, I don't know how to succinctly summarize the plot except saying Neo Zeon and Londo Bell fight it out in order and Char and Amuro fight it out also, ultimately leading to Char's plot to drop Axis on Earth, and not even just Axis. He was going to irradiate the Earth by putting whatever remaining nukes that the Federation gave him that were on Luna 2. Or not Luna 2. I think it was 5th Luna. No, he dropped 5th Luna. Luna 2.
Yeah.
And put those inside Axis, detonate them at the last minute, which would make Earth just an irradiated waste, and everybody, I guess, would have to move from Earth to space, or everyone on Earth would be dead. I imagine they'd be dead. I don't see how they can quickly leave fast enough. But yeah, that's the plot in a nutshell. But the details are really relationship based. Char and Amuro having their final sort of duels and ideological banter back and forth, kind of. There's new characters like Quest and Unigus. We see a little bit of some returning characters, really just Bright Noah and Mirai for a little bit. As far as other new characters, we have sadly Quest Pariah. Nanai, who was really cool but we didn't really see enough of. She's like Char's right hand woman. Maybe how many main mobile suit battles do we have? Maybe 3 main mobile suit battles between fleets.
There were 3. I think that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my rushed summary of the plot.
What happens at the end, Isaac?
At the end, a miracle happens, Brian. Okay, Char gets soundly defeated by Amuro, thank God, and Amuro, just holding Char's little escape pod, says, he pretty much says, "I'm going to show you up," and he goes to the falling Axis and tries to move it himself. He's confident enough that he can move it himself. I don't know if the specs on a new Gundam say, yeah, that's reasonably possible with whatever output its reactor is giving. I don't think that's possible. Anyways, so he tries moving it. Some more Federation mobile suits come to help him out. Zeon mobile suits come and help him out. How did this happen? And then this light appears from the Psycho Frame, and by the power of newtype will, or the world's collective energy. It's a little nebulous. It's a little vague of exactly what happens. But Axis is pushed away from the Earth in defiance of the laws of gravity and orbital mechanics. And the Earth is saved. Neo Zeon's defeated. I assume they go on to become the Sleeves because they never really get hunted down to the last man or woman. And yeah, the Earth Federation concludes its war with this version of Neo Zeon.
Until they rise again, right?
Yeah, and Amuro and Char, we see a bright light, but we don't know what happened to them specifically.
Yeah, the movie never confirms it. The novel, I think, is more clear that they were killed in action. But yeah, I mean, they never really come back. So yeah, you can assume that they perished together. So yeah, like Isaac said, this movie is jam-packed.
It's a lot.
From start to finish. It never slows down. And that's a good and a bad thing. I definitely would not hold it against people if they felt that it moved too quickly, or maybe didn't provide enough background information on certain things, because that is probably a legitimate criticism.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wrote down in my notes. It just dives into it without much explanation about Neo Zeon. So, where did all these people come from, these ships and all that? And I think they kind of wave it away in a short conversation. Bright says something, or no, Amuro is talking to Bright. He says something like, "Oh, we just inspected the colonies. How did Neo Zeon get all this stuff or whatever?" And then one of them says, "Well, I think it's Amuro. What do you expect? The Federation tries to rule from Earth, and in the colonies they just lie to our faces, or they hide things, or something like that." I was like, really? You guys didn't notice an enemy fleet and what had to be a massive manufacturing base to build mobile suits and weapons and ammunition. How could they hide this in plain sight in the colonies?
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the bigger weaknesses of the film, is it doesn't really tell you how Char came back to power, right? He just kind of shows back up. There is a prequel manga that's still going now, I think.
Wow.
My understanding is that the manga called Mobile Suit Gundam does cover the period after Double Zeta and before Char's Counterattack, and talks a little bit more about this. But, you know, that said, that didn't exist in 1988, right? So if you were watching this in 1988, you went straight from Double Zeta over to Char's Counterattack. So the one interesting thing is that there is an appearance by Sayla in Double Zeta.
Good.
That sort of foreshadows this. She shows up in, I think, 1 or 2 episodes and saves a character. And she does mention that she believes that her brother is still alive, and that she thinks he is just waiting for the right moment to reemerge, and that only his death will result in peace. And that's pretty spot on, right? Based on what happens in this film.
Yes, it's spot on based on what happens in this film, but not all subsequent films, Brian, because we know this isn't the end. There's still war even after Char's counterattack.
Absolutely, for sure. I was just talking about, just in general, what do we have, if you were a normal Gundam viewer, you know, what background do you have as to why Char is back? And it's kind of not much, right? They do cover it a little bit in the film. Adenauer Pariah, Quest's father, at the beginning of the movie, you know, Quest is busting his balls for the Federation not stopping the drop of Fifth Luna, and he says, well, the Federation thought that Char Aznable was dead, and that's kind of the overall theme, is that they don't think he's really alive. And then because I believe that you know, it's been a while, but I believe that's how Zeta left off, was that people weren't sure if Char was dead or alive, and so here he is making his grand reappearance. Now, to Isaac's point, he brought a fleet with him, you know, a well armed fleet. Didn't drop from the sky, right? Someone had to make it. So
yeah, and all the officers and the ammunition and the cool new mobile suits and the mobile armor and all that. It just, I don't know. I would have liked more backstory, and that's kind of one of the criticisms I have for this whole movie, really. I feel like, to wrap it up, it seems like such a bizarre thing to make this a movie rather than, you know, have Tomino say, I actually want to make this a final series. You know, they would have had so much more room and time to flesh out all the characters, all the complex relationships, rather than just cram so much into it. And every minute, I think, with Quest is a minute we could have had with Char and Amuro that was stolen.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair too. I think it definitely would have worked better. It doesn't have to be like a 50-episode show, but I think if this was made today, this would have been great as like in a format similar to Unicorn, you know, like a 5 to 7 episode OVA. That would have been great. I agree. It was quite a wild ride. What did you think about the different, you know, characters in this film, Isaac? Let's start with Amuro. In my opinion, Amuro wrecked face in this film. He was unstoppable. He just mowed down the Gyaradogas in the Rigazi, and then once he got New Gundam, no one really stood in his way. Like, he schooled Yune, he schooled Quest, he really even schooled Char at the end. I mean, they definitely dueled pretty intensely, but there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, Amuro's getting his ass kicked and he's about to be beat. No, he just calmly dismantled everyone in his way, proving that I think he is the most well-rounded and most talented pilot in the Universal Century. Have we seen anyone else kick people's ass like Amuro does? I don't think so. I mean, Char, but Amuro beat Char. So
yeah, no, he's the peak. Nothing's better than him.
He pulled some baller moves in this film. Like, I think Yune may have been the only person besides Char to land a hit on Amuro the whole time. And Amuro, he kind of just like turned to him, chucked his shield and his bazooka as a decoy, and which tricked Yune. And then when Yune looked up, the New Gundam was taking dead aim with both hands on the rifle and just blew Yune away. That was, you know, Char's best pilot besides himself. And there was another part in the film where Amuro killed an enemy suit with his bazooka while it was on his back, like docked to his suit. Like, so his bazooka docks to his back facing, like the barrel points downward. And so he shot someone below him by just triggering the bazooka while it was on his backpack. And I thought that was hilarious. And how embarrassing if you're that Gyaradoga pilot.
Yeah, pretty much what you said. I mean, this was such an Amuro movie. Like, I couldn't help myself from rooting for Amuro way more than Char. Amuro came off as just so cool in this, so awesome, such a nice guy. The ideals of humanity personified, you know, and Char was just so delusional and bizarre, and I don't know. This is like, I think this might be Char's worst movie. Right? Because he's kind of cool in, like, you know, Mobile Suit Gundam and Zeta, but here he's like just, I don't know. There's like a lot of Neo Zeon people comment about like how he prefers like younger women.
Oh, that was good. Yeah, that was Yune.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
It was a direct criticism for sure. This is Char's most extreme movie in terms of like viewpoint, right? They talk a lot in this movie about how Char's time on Earth, referring to his time in Zeta Gundam, you know, working with the AUG, you know, on Earth against the Titans, about how that made him see that, or how that convinced him, whether it's true or not. After that, Char now believes that, you know, Earth, the people on Earth, or at least the government on Earth, is irredeemable, and in order for him to save the Earth, he needs to get rid of the people. His method of doing that is pretty extreme, right? Because not only would Axis wipe out the government on Earth, it would wipe out all the innocent civilians. And that's the theme of this movie, right? You know, Amuro believes and has always believed that while the Earth Federation may not be perfect, people can always change and do better. And so Amuro believes in, you know, the human spirit, right? The ability of humanity to solve their own problems. Char believes that at least the people on Earth are not capable of that, and that they need to start over, essentially. And I think this is the perfect conflict, because to an extent Char is right in that, or Char was to an extent that Char was proven right. Say? Because because right, I mean, we know that there were more wars after this, right? Yeah. So by keeping the Federation government in place, you know, it didn't work. Right? I mean, they conspired with the Vis Foundation in Unicorn and tried to wipe out a colony. They presumably conspired with the Crossbone Vanguard later on, right? So the Federation didn't get better. But if you're Amuro, if you're the good guy, even if you would admit that Char is right in that respect, you can never cross that line of just complete mass genocide, right?
Yeah, and it's also so hypocritical of Char, because he says all this stuff about people living on Earth, blah, 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 you know. Even Yune says like weird... I think it's Hathaway says some weird stuff that sort of agrees with Char, right? About, you know, people on Earth only used half their brain or whatever. But...
That was Quest, I think.
Char recruits Quest, and she's from Earth. So... It completely destroys his argument. I know he's kind of blinded by whatever blinds him around young women or whatever. God, how old is Quest? You know what? We're not even going to go there because we know what it means. Anyways, Quest is from Earth, and she's like an incredible new type, even without the enhancements that she got later on, which made her even better. So his argument about people on Earth being maybe more warlike or, you know, just badder in general doesn't really fly, because he recruits one of these so-called tainted Earth people. So Char's a hypocrite. He really comes off as a weird guy in this movie. And yeah, this is peak villain Char, peak bad guy Char.
Yeah, I think if you were to watch Zeta Gundam, you could think, okay, what happens to Char after this, right? Does he go left and become a good guy, or does he go right and become even more of a bad guy? And he definitely went right in this film. There was no redeeming his actions here, right? He tried to commit murder on a mass scale.
Yeah. And
yeah, I think that discussion between Hathaway and Quest was kind of getting to the point of the movie, right? Where, you know, Quest is saying, well, Earth has no right to rule over the colonies from afar, and that's the overall conflict in Gundam from the very beginning, right? I mean, that's Zeon in a nutshell, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having that opinion. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. But then Hathaway says, well, does that give Char the right to freeze the Earth? And I think most reasonable people including Amuro Ray, would say no. And that in a nutshell is the conflict. And because neither side is willing to budge, it creates a war, and that's why we have this film. So
what I was thinking this whole time watching this movie was, say what you will about all previous versions of Zeon and even Neo Zeon, but the goal wasn't to outright destroy the planet Earth. It was really to conquer the whole Earth sphere. So Char's kind of in his own boat to an extent as far as wanting to wipe out the planet itself.
Yeah.
That said, though, as somebody that really defends, not I wouldn't say defends the movie, but you had almost nothing but high marks for the movie. Can you put yourself kind of in the shoes of Tomino or maybe the design or story team and tell me why Quest had so much time in this story? Like, I can't understand why this character has taken up so much time and became almost like the eyes of the audience in a way. Like, you know, she's so new to the whole setting and, you know, the intrigue and the factions and combat, and they throw her into it. Why did they do Quest? Why such an annoying, bratty, bizarre choice of a character? I feel like. Can you think of anything? Do you have any thoughts on it?
That's a good question. I've always viewed Quest and Hathaway as like a pair. I think Tomino likes to write about young characters. He always writes about young characters in all of his Gundam series, all of his Gundam work for the most part, right? I mean, when he writes about Amuro, I forget his exact age, but he's definitely younger than 18 in Mobile Suit Gundam. When he writes about Camille, he's young. When he writes about Judah, he's young. You know, and now Char and Amuro are aged up a little bit in this. You know, they're both full-fledged adults. I think Amuro's in his late 20s and Char might be 30 or, you know, in his early 30s in this. So I've always viewed Hathaway and Quest as sort of the new eyes of the audience, as you said, if you were a younger person trying to watch this film. They are the people who are now living through this conflict for the first time that Amuro and Char are veterans of at this point, right? I mean, Amuro and Char's opinion at this point is not going to change, but Hathaway and Quest are still young enough to sort of make their own decisions, and it shows that just, you know, Hathaway falls more on the Amuro side, whereas Quest clearly latches on to the Char opinion of these people are bad, let's just kill them, and Hathaway is, well, yeah, they might be bad, but that seems pretty extreme. Why she was given so much screen time, I don't know. I agree, we probably could have seen a little less of her. That's also a little hindsight too, right? I mean, when you make the movie, you don't necessarily know that Quest is going to be poorly received. Maybe they thought that Quest would have been a favorite somehow.
How on God's green earth could such a bratty, spoiled, annoying character possibly get a lot of fan support? Comment below if you're a Quest fan. I mean, how is this even possible? That must not exist. There are no Quest fans. There's no Alpha Azaru fans.
I've never met a Quest fan. I think everyone that I've showed this film to who maybe is not a Gundam fan, I think they've all thought Quest was annoying. So normally I would say, well, there's got to be some fans out there, but I personally don't know any Quest fans. But yeah,
Nope.
if you do like Quest, yeah,
Char.
absolutely. Tell us why, and tell us why you like Quest.
How did this happen?
Because I think that can lead down a few different roads, right? I mean, Quest can really ruin someone's enjoyment of this movie for whatever reason. It doesn't particularly bother me that much. I don't really enjoy her character, but I get the point of it. Did it work fully for me? No, but I see what they were going for. I'm more in this film for Amuro versus Char than anything else. So the rest of the stuff, even if I don't like it as much, it's not going to bother me too much.
I did some research, and when this movie was released, it was first released in Tokyo, and then they spread it out to like Hokkaido and, you know, Okinawa, the other parts of Japan and the other cities. On opening night, they said upon her death, the audience stood and clapped.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. That's not true.
Well, it was believable. You had me.
Yeah, I got you there. I mean, I'm sure the listeners roll nodding their head. They're like, yeah, I bet they did do that in Japan.
Oh, that's funny. Let's talk a little bit about how Because it's interesting, right? This film, you have Amuro sort of defending the people on Earth, but at the same time, the Federation is being pretty shady and pretty dumb.
Oh my God. This was like, once again, the Federation was acting like the Federation. I put the Federation was acting beyond stupid because they were not only trusting Neo Zeon, right, but they were like giving them a weapon that they just used against them. They were giving them an asteroid after they had just had an asteroid dropped on Earth. Like, this is insane. Like, I can't believe, oh my God, the Federation, the majority ruling party of the Federation, whatever it is, must be like just the most inept organization ever. There must be the small group that eventually always takes power in a crisis and like has to roll up their sleeves and actually slug it out with Zeon. Like, they're the true heroes. Like, people like Cameron Bloom, he was like an unsung hero of this movie, right? Because he
was, yep.
Without him, I think, yeah, Shaw would have won. Because he gave Bright the critical information, right? That the exchange was happening.
He did, yeah. I think that allowed Bright to tell Amuro what was happening, right? And Amuro was like, "All right, well, I'm taking New Gundam back now, and we're gonna intercept him."
Man, one man makes all the difference.
Yeah. What did you think about Earth basically selling Axis for the gold bars?
I mean,
how corrupt can you get?
Not only that, but how how rare is gold in the future? Because asteroids aren't exactly, all over the place, right? I mean, it must have been incredibly more expensive than just the gold. And also, what is the Federation low on money? Like, why are they taking gold in exchange for an asteroid? You can probably mine gold on certain asteroids or other precious metals. This was just peak Federation stupidity, or just pure corruption. One or the other. Either way, it was bad for the Federation. And I don't know. Sometimes you get what you deserve. Adenauer Pariah got what he deserved.
He got it from his own daughter too. So,
you remember that scene where he's like on the bridge at the I think when Zeon's gonna like turn over their fleet. And he's talking to the captain. I think the captain asked him, so there are going to be jobs for us after all this is over? And he tells the captain, well, they'll always need people to clean up the beach.
Yes, I do remember that.
I don't know. It had his back to him, and the captain was like inches from like attacking him. He had to restrain himself.
Yeah, Adenauer Pariah was just the most unlikable character. And you know what?
Well, of the year. He's the reason Quest is the way she is.
Like father, like daughter, for sure. Yeah, he was. His parenting skills, and skills is in quotes, were in full display in the early part of the film. Was that also the same scene though, where Neo Zeon was quote turning over their fleet, and someone remarked, "Oh, look, they even turned over one extra ship than they said they would."
Yeah, it was. And then he, like, without even like looking too closely, all he said was like, "Yep, I guess the show Char's really trusting us, or he's being really honest." He even turned over the ship they had in reserve.
Yeah. So I really like that scene. This is a good example of something this film I thought does really well. So again, this film moves really fast. It's really dense, and it's really dense because there's a lot of complicated strategies happening all the time. So like they talk a lot about, we will turn over our ships, and Char makes sure to turn over the exact number of ships that he said he would turn over, but a lot of them are fakes, and it's just very deceptive. You get another strategy like that later on in the film where Bright and Lundo Bell are trying to take out Axis, and Bright knows that he needs to take out the thrusters or break Axis apart somehow. But he knows that Char is crafty, and the only way to really hit Axis hard is to nuke it. And so Bright starts launching different waves of missiles at Axis, and he hides one nuke in each wave, or like maybe a few nukes in each wave of missiles that he launches to confuse Char, hoping that one or two of the nukes gets through. Spoiler, Char is able to take out all the nukes and find them with his funnels. But I thought that was a really cool part of the show, particularly because Char kept complimenting Bright's tactics during that. Because Char has been fighting against and with Bright for 14 years now, in this timeline, and I thought they know each other so well that it was a good representation of how far the relationship has come between those two characters.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Actually, I don't think Char said he knew Bright was in command of that ship, did he? Well, he could have known, right?
Yeah, he knew Bright was
Yeah.
in charge of Londo Bell. He kept saying, "Oh, good, like
It's
well,
like, oh,
well
Bright."
played, Bright, well played."
Like that time at the end, like when he's fighting Amuro, and like Amuro I think he like kind of tackles the Sazabi from the back, and Char just goes, Amuro. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of Char, why is he a captain in this movie? Like, why don't they call him Admiral or like, I don't know, Supreme Commander Char? I thought that was so weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Maybe because he still participates in the battles, right? Because Char's never been one. Char, I think, has stated as such many times in the different series that he does not like, giving the orders. He likes to be on the battlefield, and I think he even states that in this film when he gives that speech, like right after the recording goes off. He goes, I hate, he says something to the effect of, I hate making speeches, or I hate being a politician. You can't say he doesn't care about his men, right? Like in the very beginning of the film. Like you said, when it starts off with a bang, Yune is in trouble a bit because he's dueling Amuro, and that's not going to end well for him. So Char knows that, okay, well, that means Yune is in trouble, so get me out there, and he goes out and duels Amuro.
Yune is my second least favorite character in this movie because he was planning on backstabbing Char. Remember, he's talking to Quest, I think, like, I can take Char, or I'll be good enough to kill him, or something like that. You remember that?
I do, and why is it that everyone falls madly in love with Quest Pariah? Because both Hathaway and Yune were falling head over heels for her, and Char arguably had an interest as well.
Not even that, Brian. If you remember when Char's bringing Quest in after, like, running off with her in the colony in that field of flowers, there's like a Neo Zeon soldier on like a balcony who says, like, I forgot what he says, something really inappropriate. He's like, hey, she's just my type, or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, like. I was like, are you looking at the right person, sir? Can we court-martial this man immediately? Jesus, what the hell's going on in Neo Zeon?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should talk about this, because like this is actually kind of important for the upcoming film, Hathaway's. Well, I guess it's just called Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway, but what used to be called Hathaway's Flash. So Quest Pariah is like we've talked about, this sort of younger girl. I think she's probably 14, 15 in the film, I would imagine. Can't be much older than that, right?
Actually, Brian, I'm not sure if this is accurate online, but I read 13.
13, okay. So, yeah, somewhere early
Yikes.
teens. Yeah, 13.
Yikes, Char.
We meet her very early on in the film, and she has this big interest in new types, and she sort of has an interest in both Amuro and Char, but her philosophy starts to align with Char's very early on. After she perceives that she has been rebuffed by Amuro's love interest, Chan, which was really funny.
Oh, God.
And Chan was just like, what are you talking about? Go away. Like, why are you here? Like, I work here. Who are you? But along the way, Quest acquires all these admirers. She acquires Hathaway Noah, who's the son of Bright Noah. They meet on the plane, I guess I should say on the shuttle, right, from Earth to wherever they were going, the Londonian, I guess. Char then picks up Quest and takes interest in her. She's almost a replacement for Lala, and that's actually mentioned later on in the film, which is a little disturbing. And then when she goes under Char's wing, Yune, Char's sort of right-hand man at this point, also falls in love with Quest. So I don't know, Isaac. I don't get it. What? This girl must have a magnetic personality or something.
I'm gonna chalk it up to her new type powers or something, because like her hair is like turquoise, and Amuro's the only man that apparently keeps a level head or something, because he pays her almost no mind.
Yeah. He's like, why are you? It's dangerous to be on the mobile suit deck. Please go away.
He maybe met her once, and then like the rest of the time she was just another Xeon pilot that he had to destroy.
Yeah. I mean, young characters are always very emotionally sensitive in Tomino's works, right? I mean, Amuro definitely had his emotional moments. Camille, I think, no explanation needed there. Judah was pretty level-headed for the most part. But, yeah, I mean, Hathaway, he's at that Tomino age where I guess the hormones are raging in Tomino's stories, and you just fall madly in love with these people that you've just met. Yune, I mean, he is a cyber new type, so he's already unstable, I guess. And so maybe he's latching on early, and Char's clearly using her as somewhat of a replacement for Lala, or at least he sees a potential there. I mean, I guess, what did you think about that? So you mentioned that Gyune was going to backstab Char, right. And that's because Gyune fell in love with Quest, but he said, you don't need Char. I can be your man, or whatever you want to say. And he just sort of like comes out and says what everyone was thinking about Char, right? He says, hey, be careful with Char. I know you like him or whatever, but he has an interest in young girls, and he's just using Nanai as like a cover for his interest. He's actually in love with this girl from the 1 Year War named Lala, and he's using you as a replacement for Lala. And I was like, damn, that is a very direct accusation, sir.
Yeah. I mean, it even gets worse from there. Do you remember that scene where Quest like ran into the bridge and Char was there? And she said, are you just using me as a substitute for Lala? And like everyone in the bridge crew just turns around.
Yeah, and they're like,
yeah, and then Char like kind of scoots her out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
but then Char like confronts Gyune about it, and
Yeah.
I think they were getting into their mobile suits, I think,
Right.
or maybe like on an elevator or something, and he just whispers to Gyune like, how dare you say this about me, such and such. I guess, where do you think that this Neo Zeon Char lies? Do you think he's really interested in Quest, or do you think he's really in love with Nanai?
No.
I mean, do you think he's really using Quest as a replacement for Lala, or do you just think that he sees talent there?
I'd say Quest is his substandard Lala substitute, but at the same time, I don't know. Char is ultimately in love with Char. He loves his own ideology. He loves hearing himself talk about how Earth needs to be wiped out and all that. And Nanai's so competent. I wouldn't be surprised if in whatever side story they released, she ended up being the one that founded the sleeves pretty much, and stuck around until Full Frontal showed up. Because she was that good, right? She was like always on top of things. She didn't take any of Quest's nonsense. She was the only one that slapped her.
Yeah, she was the equivalent of Bright, right, on the Zeon side.
Yeah, I'd say Char was, he was juggling things at once. He had Nanai, and then he had his little, useless kind of quests. It was both at once.
Yeah, I agree. I think Char at this point just views everyone as a tool, as the means to his end.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think he definitely loved Lala at one point, but that point is gone. I personally don't buy that he was really in love with Quest. Again, I think he's just using her as a tool to get to his end. I don't think he necessarily loves Nanai though either.
No,
I mean, I think at some point in the movie, what does he say? He says Nanai has been very nice and very useful to me, or something like that.
But I mean, she's not being really fooled by it. I think because like, there's that scene where she like throws her drink, right? She's like, she just gets frustrated with him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, she knows that she's benefiting from this relationship as well.
Yeah.
So I felt that she knew that. She was not naive to that fact.
Yeah. God, we're talking about this, and this makes me just get to another point on my notes. What is the point of this Gyune Quest Char love triangle? It just soaked so much useless time. I don't feel like it advanced the story in any way. It had almost nothing to do with the plot involving actually attacking Earth. It didn't tie into really Amuro in any way. I just thought it was such a bizarre tangent to go off on. It felt like a bullet point someone wrote when they were brainstorming. Like, we need a love triangle. Why? Well, we just need one. It's good for the story. And I was like, no. It's in retrospect, it shouldn't have been this.
I think it just ties back to that's one of the weaknesses of the film is there are a lot of new characters, and there's probably too many to give them too much backstory. And Gyune, Quest, Nanai, Keira, Chan, they all sort of suffer from that. There's not enough screen time for everyone to go around. I mean, I think it was just a subplot they tried. I think maybe it worked for some people. Obviously, it didn't work for you. I actually liked Gyune. I thought he was a decent character. Definitely didn't have probably enough screen time, but I think he fared better on screen time than a lot of the other characters.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, in a whole season, a full series, I feel like we could have seen a really cool arc of Gyune as maybe like he's a cyber newtype. He's trying to prove himself. He falls in love, and then maybe he like develops a sort of jealousy, envy of Char, and sees himself wanting to kill him one day. So that would have been a cool thing to see unfold over multiple episodes. But it'll never happen. But that said, this show did have a lot of good things. You know, we got to see some cool mobile suit combat, cool mobile suit designs. I even liked how they explained away why Londo Bell was the only force fighting Char's Neo Zeon. I think Amuro and Bright are talking again, or maybe some officers are talking to Bright about how the rest of the Federation fleet isn't leaving their colonies because they're scared of, like, the moment they do, those colonies will go into rebellion.
Yeah.
So that was a good reason of, okay, I see why a small force is fighting Neo Zeon as opposed to the full might of the combined Federation Navy.
Yeah, it seems like at this point, everyone in the colonies hates the Earth Federation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't blame them. There have been so many wars back to back. Like, how can anybody be doing well, you know, except for, like, the Federation politicians? Yeah, it's just...
That's rough.
Yeah, pretty much.
So one last thing about Quest and Hathaway before we maybe move on to some other characters. But so this, we've mentioned this on the podcast once before, but sort of at I'll say the first climax of the movie, right? Because the main thing that you're here to watch is the climax of Amuro versus Char. But there are, as we've said, a lot of these other characters involved. And so I'd say the pre-climax, Isaac, is when all the Gyune, Quest, Chan, all that stuff is resolved. So if I set the stage a little bit, so the sort of second best pilot on Londo Bell was Keira Sue, I think is her last name. And she pilots the Rigazi after Amuro gets his new Gundam.
Keira.
Yeah, so Keira goes out, and she's in love with Astonaige, who is a character from Zeta Gundam, and I think Double Zeta Gundam. It's been a while. But Astonaige is a lovable mechanic on the ship. So Keira's out there in the Rigazi, and Gyune kind of schools her pretty well, I would say. She didn't really stand too much of a chance. Although she was like an ace pilot, I don't know, she didn't really show off that many skills, I thought. Did you feel like Keira was ace status as she was billed?
If she was outclassed by a cyber new type.
Yeah, I feel like Gyune kind of handled her pretty easily.
Yeah.
So Gyune takes out Keira. He wants her to surrender, so she gets out. He grabs her. Gyune then is using her as leverage against Amuro. Amuro's funnels are a little too sensitive, and they fire at Gyune, and he breaks Keira's neck, essentially, and she kind of just goes floating into space, which is pretty sad, pretty brutal, actually.
Yeah, I was a little confused about exactly what happened to her, because they never show us her face, and when they take her body back to the hangar bay, they tell him, you know, oh, don't look, don't get too close. So I thought maybe he squeezed her, and like the inside of like her visor was just, you know, jelly.
Yeah, it was something. I took it that he shook her violently enough to do fatal damage in whether it was squeezing or neck breaking or both. That starts the first moment where I think Amuro was pissed at Gyune. So then everyone finds themselves back on the battlefield a little bit later. Amuro is up against Quest and Gyune, and I thought there was a good remark. Amuro remarked that Quest's presence felt more playful than evil or as a threat. And I was like, oh, that's him basically just saying you're not really a threat to me at the moment. And so Amuro's, you know, fighting Gyune and Quest, and remember he's pissed at Gyune for killing Keira. And he ends up killing Gyune, like I said earlier, and he schools Quest just as well. So after Amuro takes Keira's body back,
yeah,
Chan, for whatever reason, gets into the Rigazi, which is now damaged. It has like one leg, one arm, can't really defend itself. She decides that Amuro needs help, and he needs help in the form of a psycho frame. And she goes out there in this disabled suit trying to get this psycho frame to Amuro. And on the way out, her Jigen causes an explosion that kills Astonaige.
No, what? I don't think she killed him,
what a dumb
right?
move.
Did she kill him?
Thought so.
I thought they take a hit, and then like it's implied he dies because there's an explosion near him, and then like that explosion also killed the pilot of the Jigen near Hathaway. That's why you see like a body kind of fly out of the Jigen. And then Hathaway, that explains how Hathaway was able to get the Jigen. I think they got hit by a missile at the same time. But it was like, she literally just left the hangar bay, and then they take a hit, and you assume that Astonaige is dead.
Yeah, poor Astonaige.
He made her favorite pasta. What was the pasta? Comment below what pasta Astonaige made.
Do you think it was rigatoni? Penne?
Yeah.
Farfalle?
Or was it like ravioli? If it was ravioli, what did he stuff it with? You know, it could be anything. Like, yeah.
That should be on the menu at the Gundam Cafe. Astonaige's pasta.
Or wouldn't it be Keira's favorite pasta?
Yeah, like Astonage's pasta for Keira or something. Or
yeah. So sad. It's always in a blood red sauce.
Oh,
like her visor. They serve it in a helmet upside down.
so sad.
Zigzion.
So Chan goes out there, and now we're about to create what I like to call Tomino's version of. Well, actually, I guess this would have happened before any of Tarantino's films. But what happens next is essentially the classic Tarantino Mexican standoff, the end of any Tarantino film, right? Where everybody's pointing guns at each other, telling them, "Don't you do that to this person over here," and then they all have like different allegiances, and they all end up shooting each other at the same time. That's about what happens here. Chan goes out there. She's trying to reason with Quest. Quest doesn't like that. They're arguing. Chan ends up accidentally firing a rocket at Quest, and it blows up the Alpha Azero, and then Hathaway gets upset that Chan just killed Quest, and so Hathaway just straight up murders Chan.
That was terrible.
That was awful, right? I mean,
yeah,
he literally just aimed his rifle and just mowed her down in a disabled suit.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that. I mean,
what
an ass, Hathaway.
Yeah. I see why Hathaway goes on in the future and becomes, involved with conflict.
Yeah, we've talked about this once before on the podcast, but in the novel version, Hathaway accidentally kills Quest, not Chan. So that's kind of a big change. But anyway, we'll see how the new film deals with that.
Yeah, and if Bright will be back, I hope he is, and all that.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be back.
Good.
Bright is like the most level-headed person in the Universal Century.
Yeah, God.
He should be in everything.
I mean, yeah. He really handled Cameron Bloom like with so much respect and restraint. Like Bright, I don't know. If he retires, he should like teach like Federation officers etiquette or something, because he's so cool, calm, and collected. Such a polite guy.
And then, what did you think about the knockdown, drag out fight at the end with Amuro and Char?
I like that it was both in mobile suits and also within like the asteroid itself. So it was cool that they got to fight man to man. They kind of had similar but different weapons. Char had like that rocket pack that's on his thigh. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was cool. Amuro, I guess the Federation doesn't like that, so they use an actual rocket launcher you have to put on your shoulder.
That whole scene also very nicely paralleled their fight in at Abawaku when they kind of did the same thing. So I'm pretty sure that was on purpose, which I really enjoyed that. I thought that was good.
I like how Amuro decided to get a little crafty though, and like he set up a booby trap for he set up a booby trap for Char. It didn't quite work out, but he tried. he tried being sneaky for once.
Yeah, with the radio.
Yeah, that was good, and I liked that he was ultimately defeated. Char was ultimately defeated. So I would have liked it more if the ending was Char actually dying, but that's not what I got. Or them killing each other sort of simultaneously as the Earth is saved. But yeah, overall, having an ambiguous ending like that, it's not something I think is the best, but I think it's good.
I actually was okay with the ending because I think there's almost no perfect way to end such a rivalry like Amuro and Char. I guess I liked that they were arguing until the bitter end. Like the Axis shock happens literally mid-argument between the two, which is just perfect for their relationship. And I think that was actually pretty shocking at the very end. Do you remember what Char said? Like his last words were, "Amuro, Lala was like a mother to me." And I think Amuro says, "What?" And then that's when the psycho frame overloads and Axis is pushed away.
Yeah, I had no idea what that meant. Like,
I don't think Amuro did either.
Yeah, she was younger. The shock of it was what triggered the salvation of Earth. It was the motherly spirit of Lala, which we knew nothing about. That came out of nowhere.
But does that reframe how you view Char and Lala's relationship instead of a guy? Not to say that he wasn't potentially preying on her, but I guess he felt he was getting something out of it that maybe we didn't know he was getting.
Maybe, but like we never saw any of that, right? He was sort of like her tutor and teacher. I never got any kind of weird motherly, maternal surrogate thing going on. It just, I'm gonna chalk that up to like maybe the Japanese to English team didn't do a completely successful translation, Like that's the script we have now, but the actual meaning is maybe something different in Japanese. Like maybe it meant to be like, family member substitute, because he never really had his family was taken away from him so much throughout his life. Maybe that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Or something. But yeah, for me that was not only very bizarre to say, but it's very bizarre to end on. That's the last thing Amuro hears before death.
Yeah.
Not ideal. So I put that on my list of things this movie should improve upon if it's decided to be done again or turned into a whole series or OVA, whatever.
Well, look, I would love it if they animated that Beltotchka's children manga with the Hainu and the Nightingale. With modern animation, oof, that could be a good time right there.
I don't think it'll happen, but if they did get to it, I feel like it would be amazing to just have them flesh out the whole story more. You could have Quest come back, maybe just make some changes to her character and how her role in the story is. It's just there's so much room for improvement. There's a few mistakes, there's a lot of successes, but there's also room for improvement.
That fight was just so good at the end between Amuro and Char. I like that it was a clear victory for Amuro. No one really interfered. We got a clean one-on-one. They clashed sabers. Char had that funny moment where he was upset that Amuro's saber was stronger than his. Char did get in like one pretty good hit on Amuro. I think he like sliced his crotch open. But after that, Amuro, he took Sazabi's arm off, and then he pulled out like the cabling in Char's in the Sazabi's neck, and then he just started punching him in the face, and he kicked him in the gut. I thought that was a brutal hand-to-hand combat fight for these really advanced new type suits.
Yeah, and I mean the Sazabi's a little bigger than the new Gundam. I don't think by a lot, but it clearly was outclassed by the new Gundam.
New Gundam isn't just for show.
I guess not. I mean, they really went all out, and it's, dare I say, the most powerful Gundam in the Universal Century.
Ooh. And we're going to cut it there for time. Next week, we'll conclude our review of Char's Counterattack by discussing the mysterious ending and all the mobile suits. Spoilers, Isaac really hates the Alpha Azaru. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a like and hit that subscribe button. We'd also love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment with your thoughts on the film. Tell us if you're a fan of Quest Pariah and what your pick is for Kayra's favorite pasta. You can reach us on Twitter at Colony Dropcast, on YouTube, and on Instagram, also at Colony Dropcast. Keep those Monosky reactors warm and stay safe out there, everybody.